Thanks, that'd be great.
Yeah. Oh, is it already recording?
Oh yeah, it is.
Oh, okay. You'll just edit this part out?
Fine.
Yeah. And I'll have to talk loud enough to be heard.
Yeah.
So I was saying to you, one of the things I see in people's Absetzen is they often do it something like this. If I start like in strength and you're making an overhow to me, they come with this angle and then force through the angle to make their Absetzen. And so the thing is that leads to an overbind really, really easily. So if you're making your downward blow towards me and I'm coming this way, you only need to deviate your blow slightly for this to fail. And then of course people say, well, I can act from that failure. But if you're going to make a technique that always fails, then you're giving a tactical advantage to your opponent who can always plan for that failure.
Right.
And so how I do Absetzen is that I always bring the point over first and then turn into the ox in that case. Because by bringing the point, if we go through the same idea, by bringing the point over, I get what I call in my system the most powerful advantage of crossing, at least with the thrust. And this creates a slope that forces your weapon to begin to descend in my forte. And while it's descending, I'm closing the line and striking in single time. So pointing into the crossing is vital to making Absetzen function. And then if you're going to overcome it by overbinding, you have to, like if you try to overbind the beginning of it, it's very difficult. And so I want you to have to almost cut laterally in order to overbind, because now when I make this follow-on blow, you are tactically out of position because of how broadly you need to interact to overbind. So that's my summary.
That's great. What do you do with your? I've been asking people about the extension of the arms to create a strong structure against heavy downward blows. So, for example, as a fencer who's likely to be less powerful than some of my opponents, I'm concerned about intercepting heavy blows.
But I'm all for good structure.
Right.
However, in this particular case, what I need to do is align the force I'm receiving into my body structure into the ground.
Yep.
I don't actually necessarily need to have the arms extended to do this effectively, meaning that we can do the same thing, and I could select here. So you see I've angled my body to face the crossing. So I have, and even though my arms are in there, they are aligned. This would be weak. So keeping my elbows in allows me to create an alignment to my core, to my back foot. But this angle makes it even the more powerful blow you throw, it's going to be absorbed into my hilt or into my shield, and thus into the ground. And this alignment.
It's more the angle of your body and sword.
Yes, and the sword geometry that guides the force there to be absorbed by the ground. Versus I'm certainly, if you make a blow and I were to meet it like this, or any sort of meeting like this, the arms being straight is important to being able to brace that. But the problem is, if my goal is to hit you with the point, then this is a weak position regardless of that fact. So I might as well create this. And again, by using the point makes you powerful against even a very small or frail person, makes them very powerful against, because they're just using the ground to support, and they're using their skeleton to support that. And so there's certainly strength that I gain from having my arms straight in a way, but it's not required as well. Again, as long as I keep good mechanical alignment to my torso. So one of the things I look for is I see a lot of people who have their elbows flare out. You can see them being like this. This is already weaker. This is significantly stronger.
So in some systems, there's the concept of winding to the short edge or
Yes.
the false edge. Why would you not do that?
No, I might still wind to the false edge. Yeah, I don't have anything against using the false edge. It's just making sure that you have an understanding of why you're doing such a thing. The false edge, because of the mechanics of the hand, actually you can pull in this direction towards the false edge more strongly than you can push towards the true edge. But the issue with the false edge is that it's harder to close the line, meaning that if we look at it in this way, on this side, which is sort of the most open side, if I'm on this side here, I can cross over your sword very powerfully this way. However, it's much harder for me to close the line, whereas the true edge closes the line there. Same thing on the opposite side. However, when we turn the false edge this way, so I can turn my false edge to my left here, or I can turn my false edge this way. I can close the line using the false edge, and it still has this mechanical downward advantage. But again, I see a lot of people coming to a bind. So if we're making this pair, we come to this bind, and then to overcome it, they roll to their false edge in a way that looks like this. And if the opponent there uses the point of their sword appropriately, they should overcome this. If they push with their hands, like if you try to push me forward using your hands, then of course this seems like it could be strong. But as soon as they know that they should pull with their backhand, and oh, don't even lift your hands, just push my sword downward. If I'm turning this way, then following the point is so much more powerful. And so if I'm going to use wind to my false edge, if we come back to that same crossing, if I'm winding to my false edge, I'm still directing my point to cross over, and notice my body. So I've turned slightly just by turning my hips to the crossing. Now even if you give me that same pressure we had before with your point, even using your point, I can close. Now you're reaching around, so we're getting to a new situation, right? But if you're trying to dominate the line, then I can, by using the false edge and, well, that was all leverage, but by using the false edge and orienting my body and my crossing to that side, I can become very powerful.
Thank you.
Hey, you're welcome.